Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of We the Union coverage. I have never done this before in terms of a video format, and I do think that this may actually be helpful in kind of getting some of the thoughts out, maybe better than a normal post would be. And so, thank you for the hundreds of you that voted for this to happen. We're going to give it a shot. By this point, you have heard that the Union have let go of Coach Jim Curtin, and this is, by all stretches of the word, a shock to the Union fan base for a season like 2024 that has been incredibly difficult to navigate at times, just tension filled and difficult. That divided the fan base a ton. I do think it is safe to say that the vast majority of Union fans are united in this by saying that it is stunning. And in many ways, there is not good feelings. The vibes, the mojo, all of it is up for question right now. And so we're going to dive in a little bit. There's only a couple slides here that I just want to work through, and some talking points because I actually think I may be onto something here. You're going to have to feel free to chime in on Instagram or on X, wherever you want to give your feedback. But of course, we did learn today that Coach Curtin will not be in charge of the Union as it pertains to the clubhouse and the squad. And so we're going to look at a few things. I want to start here. And this was just the official post. I want to read this just so we kind of set the stage. If you haven't read this, this might be good news. It says, today, the Philadelphia Union have parted ways with head coach Jim Curtin. The club announced Thursday. Curtin was the second longest tenured coach in MLS, only behind Peter Vermes of Sporting KC. The two-time Sigi Schmidt MLS Coach of the Year had led Philadelphia since 2014. Maybe you remember, this was actually right after they had let their former coach go, and he sort of stepped in the interim, and the team sort of started winning and turning around. And then suddenly we find him being at the helm permanently, almost kind of like a topper if you're a Phillies fan. What happened a few seasons back. It says, during Curtin's tenure, the Union won a 2020 Supporters Shield and made the 2022 MLS Cup final. They were also three-time US Open Cup finalists and twice made the CONCACAF Champions League semifinal. In 2024, the Union finished 12th in the Eastern Conference standings and missed the Audi MLS Cup playoffs for the first time since 2017. Ultimately, this is where I think it's important. Curtin posed a record of 170 wins, 90 losses, and 134 draws across all competitions. And it goes on to kind of thank him. And they say that the front office says that there's a need for change and want to reevaluate sporting strategy going forward, and felt that that change was necessary. Stats and facts here. I do think that this is very notable. Man, Coach Curtin, an incredible record. I mean, literally made this team the identity that it was. In many ways, turned a mediocre roster at times into a contending and even championship contending. Obviously, 2020 Supporters Shield, 2022 MLS Cup final. Yeah, it was very much a how do I squeeze everything I can out of a club that maybe doesn't have the same kind of star-studded caliber rosters like the other MLS teams might. There were moments, of course, where frustration. Even this season, he had mentioned he was slow to make subs at times, or switch up formation, or just questionable roster calls like leaving out Tyberibo from the starting 11 for so long, who just seemed to be a revelation once he had come in. But all to say, over the vast majority of his time in a league that is now spending a lot more for a team that spends a lot less, he was swinging up in his weight class, and that cannot be understated enough. I just want to point out this. Last year, the front office had signed Curtin to an extension through 2026. So this is not necessarily something that screams we were looking to go on without you. This feels like maybe a reactionary move based on the performance of this year. I don't necessarily think that in many ways I would contribute him as the main factor of the team's lack of success this year. I do think maybe at times his coaching style or tactics maybe played a role, but I don't know that I would sit here and say that it was the main deciding factor, which I think is maybe where a lot of Union fans feel maybe that he was the scapegoat in this way. But I do think the extension last year sort of set us up to think that they were in it for the long haul. So there are some reports that are going out that basically perhaps anybody who is in the regime that wants to spend money and not grow from within is maybe subtly being weeded out. I don't know that if that's the case 100%. That's not confirmed. I do think that maybe some of the comments, obviously, that some of the players have made and that he's even shared at times, perhaps played into the role. I've met Coach Curtin twice. The first time was a number of years back at the Bethlehem Steel tryout. Excuse me. And then this year, I met him at the Union Town Hall meeting. Spirits were high. The vision seemed to be united despite maybe some differences, and they had doubled down in article after article this season that Coach Curtin's job was not in question. So this feels like a little bit of a reactionary move, or potentially something that is almost spur of the moment. Excuse me. And I'm wondering to what extent there was maybe some disunity behind the philosophy to go completely youth focused, and maybe that sort of led to this call that we found today. I do want to look at this too. This screams to me in the same vein of a reactionary move, um, and makes me wonder, do they actually have a plan in the front office and a vision? What is it going forward? Obviously, the town hall meeting, if you haven't seen that post at We the Union, feel free to go back and look for maybe what that looked like. But the front office really said that they're buying into this vision of a academy first mentality. They want to be the best academy in the world, and the best at developing American players to really secure the American game long term. And I do think perhaps the call to spend more money sort of flies in the face of that. And I wonder if they want to find a coach who is passionate about that, which will lead me sort of to my next slide as who I think a replacement might be. But I do think that that was a major decision. Something that I was kind of thinking about today is, are the Union better or worse after a move like this today? I can't say 100% either way, but I do feel like this is the first domino to drop, maybe the first hat that hits the floor into a series of moves that might send the Union into a massive rebuild. What I loved about Coach Curtin was he was Philly through and through. He knew the area. He was deeply invested. He was a local grad, and so his involvement in the team really spoke to the community, and brought the community into the game of soccer in Philadelphia. And so I do think it's going to be hard to replace somebody from the outside, to just bring it in and go cold. And so I actually think, as we're thinking of replacements, the obvious ones sort of fall like this. And this is sort of in the order of where I think they might be looking. Obviously, Coach Marlon LeBlanc, who has done an incredible job with the Union 2 this year. They're actually up for a title this weekend on Saturday. Perhaps if you're watching it after that, we already sort of know where that landed. But I don't think that it is far-fetched to say that Coach Marlin is up next. I do think that even if you watch Coach Curtin's trajectory in his career, he was a interim temporarily and then gained the status of the main manager. And I do think that Marlon LeBlanc is in a position where he could find himself doing something similar, sort of the heir apparent stepping into the role after being very successful with his Union 2 squad, potentially even winning a trophy and buying in long term to the goal to play young players and to be a constant developmental team. I think that he would make the most sense for this. I also think there would be a limited amount of backlash because he's already beloved by the players and the fans alike. Second place, I think this is a little bit of a stretch, but they have talked about in the past how Ali Bedoya has shown interest, and it seems to be mutual from the Union as well, to continue to have him as an influential role in the organization long term beyond his playing days. I do think he's played his last game as a player, but I do wonder if perhaps there was talks of bringing him in potentially a head coaching job. I don't think that this is a very obvious move. What I think is probably more likely is in the offseason, as they're looking for a manager to replace, maybe what would happen is Coach Marlin would slide into the Union's main role, and then we may see Ali Bedoya slide into the Union 2 as a part of that player personnel developmental, whereas Coach Marlin, who has a quote-unquote proven track record with the Union 2, would kind of carry that into the Union 1. I think the least likely currently, and maybe this is wrong, again, this is more of a gut feel, is that Ernst Tanner goes out and finds a European hire, which, again, I don't know that I love that, only because one of the main reasons that the Union weren't winning this year, obviously there was injury involved, but there was a ton of poor play. I don't think you can plug and play a different coach at a net sort of even level and expect the results to be better than what Coach Curtin did. I think the players believed in the system for a long time. The league caught up to that system, and it was very difficult to pivot and adjust. And so I wonder if that really makes a difference to bring in somebody from Europe. But I do think if we're doing predictions right now, I'm going to go ahead and say Marlon LeBlanc, and then Ali Bedoya sliding into the Union 2. Overall, the final move grade, and again, this is sort of a gut reaction. I don't see it getting any higher than this. Timing is everything, and I don't know that this was the right time to do this move. I'm going to give this one a D. Of course, time will tell if they come in and win an MLS Cup next year. We're all going to be saying this was the best move on planet Earth. I'm trying to stay optimistic because I like to see moves play out before I get into a judgmental space. I do really feel like this was not the time to do this, primarily because you don't take a mediocre team and make it great. And I say mediocre in a very loving way, in the sense that we don't have Messi, we don't have Chucho Hernandez, we don't have Olivier Giroud, we don't have these pedigree players that are world renowned and worldwide and still compete at a high level, to the point where we almost had a trophy this year purely from our League's Cup run alone, minus maybe a crazy critical call from a red card that would send us down a road where we don't have Tyberibo, so on and so forth. We send Jose Martinez away. There was a lot of Julian Carranza leaves at the beginning of the year. There were many, many moves that I think played into our lack of performance this year, including our players we do have not coming together when we needed it. And so I don't think that he is really the reason for that. So I don't think that now is the right time to move on from him. Does that mean that perhaps some of our tactical changes, even playing our players in a 4-3-3 or something else going forward, may not be a bad idea? Obviously, I'm open to that. I do think time will tell. My main question is, do we even have the players to try something different? And that I don't know either. And so at this point, it's a D for me, and I'm curious to see maybe what it looks like going forward. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation and player movement. Maybe this will, if people enjoy this, we'll do another video breaking down who I think stays and goes in the offseason. But as for right now, Union faithful, hang in there, be there for each other, and don't let your head droop, although this does feel a little bit like a stinger. In the meantime, it is a tough pill to swallow. I do just want to leave you with this cool Coach Curtin story. The first time that I had met him was at the, like I said, Bethlehem Steel tryout. It was 30 degrees, freezing cold. We stopped and took a picture. I was, maybe early 20s, just pumped to meet him, and he took all the time in the world. He was super kind. Very generous with his time, as hundreds of guys were out there trying out for Bethlehem Steel. I actually got to meet up with him again this year, like I mentioned. And he remembered that day. We took a picture. I showed him the old picture. We had a great moment to sort of reconnect. And no matter what his legacy is like on the field or as a coach of the Union, he's just an incredibly stand-up guy. And honestly, I hope that the Union do the right thing. If you're asking me, I do think it'd be great to put him in the Ring of Honor, only because I don't know that we get another manager for 10 years who gets us our first silverware. And sort of matches that threshold. But in any case, I do just want to say this too. On Tuesday, I'm going to be back with my friend JP Zapata, and we're going to be on PHLY Philly Union talking more about this. Perhaps we have more news by then. So that's going to be live at 1 o'clock. And so looking forward to that. Again, that's on Tuesday. And so if you have time, make sure you can come out for it. But until then, stay strong. And man, we are in for quite the off season. And let me know if you like this format. Maybe we'll bring it back. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we'll talk really, really soon.